now. In Martus, all users will be able to go to the planner menu and to worksheets. So instead of going to change requests, we're going to prepare a draft proposal on a worksheet. And in Martus, a worksheet basically is the combination of your program and checkbook. So when we get to the worksheets area, depending on your level of access, you would see which fiscal year you're currently working in, checkbook, and your program. So the first thing we're going to want to do to prepare a FY22 budget is to change 21 to 2022 and click filter to load the 2022 budgets. And once we have 2022 at the top and next to the worksheets, we know we're in the right spot. And the items you have access to would be listed here. We don't see funding sources, so if you have multiple funding sources and access to multiple checkbooks, make sure you know which checkbook or worksheet that you need to get into for the proper funding source. If we ended up using a funding source that doesn't belong with a certain worksheet, that creates an error in Martus, so that could delay the ability to produce the draft budgets also. So make sure we work that out before we start. I have a test company, so that's what we're going to use. So once we found the worksheet we want to work on, we can then click the blue edit button to begin editing our budget. As we get here, we see a number of things. We have worksheet draft FY22 at the top. So today or the next several weeks, as we're preparing our budgets for June, make sure we're at the worksheet for draft FY22 before you go forward. Has the year again here. Here's our checkbook and our program. So as long as we're doing that, great. And as we all start to prepare this, the first half of this worksheet is actually our 2021 stuff, our actuals and budget. So I have a test budget in there, so we can see throughout the year I had a $2 revenue, and then the $2 revenue was taken out. And the last column is the budget for a line item. So we'd know that account number 41,000 at the end here has no budget, and 45,000 had a budget of $200. The income is broken up from expense, so we can see our telephone line item had no spending, so each of these months are blank, but it had a $200 budget. If you go into FY22 today, you would have spending through April available for you to see, to give you at least an idea of where you stand on spending. And then the bottom half is the FY22 budget, which is now empty. So the first method that you can begin to add a budget for FY22 is basically a manual entry of your account number and funding source. Below the FY22 budget and below these buttons, there are two drop-down boxes. One says account, one says funding source. So if we wanted to begin preparing our budget, and we were going to propose a budget for our tribal employees, for our wages, we find the account number for that, and then we need to find the account number for a funding source. So you can start typing your funding source name, and Martus will start to match what we're typing. So when I have the account number and funding source, I click add line. It's now added that line to my FY22 budget, and then I can just continue to repeat that for whichever budget line items and funding sources match this particular worksheet. And then as we're done, we can start to type in our proposal for budget for the year for those line items in that funding source. And as I was saying about the funding sources, we gotta be careful here. Is that Martus, unlike Intact, doesn't recognize that the council funding source wouldn't belong under test company and this checkbook. So as we're working on our budgets, we need to make sure we're using those correct funding sources to prevent a possible situation where that error is going to happen. So if we end up with a line item we don't want, after we've manually added stuff or something that doesn't match, at the end of these is a checkbox that we can click, and then we can delete that line out of our budget and then begin preparing our budget once again. After we've entered our budget, if we're finished, click the blue Save Worksheet button. That now saves what we've just worked on. So if we leave the screen and come back to this, those would still be there. If the finance office needed to prepare a report for the draft proposals, this is there. And the best thing about using the Save Worksheet is you can always come back and make an adjustment. If we realize that that was a typo, our tribal employees was supposed to be 150,000, not 15,000, we could come here and make that adjustment and then save again. Next to it is a button that says Submit Worksheet. If you use this, this locks the worksheet, so it's no longer accessible if you need to make changes. The person assigned to your checkbook and program as the approver in Martus will get an email saying they need to approve this worksheet, which is a fine method to use. But in the event that we realize that there's a change we need to make, you can't unlock it. You would have to contact me, Lynette, Lori, or Ken Packard to be able to get this worksheet unlocked so you can continue changes. So use the Save Worksheet so you can save time if you have to make a change and you don't have any delays on wanting to make any fixes to your budget. Does anyone have questions about entering a budget manually like this? Okay. I'm going to delete what we've put in here because we're going to move on to the second option.